Hi, what's up, y'all? It's Poppin' in. Steve about to react to this video by Honest. It's titled Taylor Swift is Becoming the Marvel of Pop Music. So I recently reacted to her album on my Patreon. Check it out if you're interested. But yeah, somebody sent me this to check out. And at first when I read the title, I'm like, oh, he's giving her a compliment. But then I thought about it like, oh wait, maybe not. Because I do know that this album wasn't received well by a lot of fans. And also because I remember reacting to a video where people were saying that Marvel is falling off, like how they used to be really good, but now they're just making anything and it's not as good. So I wonder if he's taking that angle. Well, we'll see. Let's watch.
Taylor Swift has released her 11th album, alluringly titled The Tortured Poets Department, which is allegedly a jab at her ex-boyfriend Joe Alwyn, who revealed that he had a group chat named The Tortured Man Club in a Variety interview. The title of this album unfortunately preemptively demonized Joe, and had a lot of people making assumptions and said Taylor's army of attack dogs on him for months on end, especially given that The Tortured Poets was teased as the big breakup album.
But I'm gonna be your wife, gonna smash up your back up, having a sunny, I'm gonna get you back.
His biggest fault is his crippling depression and reluctance to marry Taylor after being together for so long, leaving her with broken pieces and a broken heart. Per Taylor's standards, it's a very professional album, and maybe even more direct than a lot of her previous work. From her lyrics, it definitely seemed like Joe Alwyn is the great love of her life, or was at one point, until you realize she has someone else in mind. Taylor opens up the album with Fortnite featuring Post Malone, who was featured on both Beyonce and Taylor's records, but feels like an afterthought on both finished products. Taylor's being forthcoming about her alcohol dependency on the song, something that has been talked about in the media for a while, but never explicitly stated until now. Was supposed to be sent away, but they forgot to come and get me. I was a functioning alcoholic till nobody noticed my new aesthetic. All this to say, I hope you're okay. The lyrics allude to an alleged stay at a mental health facility, which is not exactly clear if she's using the facility as a metaphor or actually visited one, but she references it many times throughout the album.
I'm supposed to be talking shit about Taylor. That's what I said in my other video. Fuck out of here, Taylor.
Who Taylor got some flack for associating with after propping him up on her tours after his racially motivated comments.
Oh.
But Daddy, I love him. It seems like she not so subtly responded to the backlash.
What racially motivated comments? What did he say?
Good idea. I know it's crazy, but he's the one I want. I'll tell you something right now. I'd rather burn my whole life down than listen to one more second of all this bitching and moaning. I'll tell you something about my good name. It's mine along with all the disgrace. I don't cater to all this dressed in past clothing. My biggest rebuttal to Taylor being annoyed that people have something to say about her relationships, in this case particularly allegedly being about her relationship with Maddie Healy, is that she opened that can of worms a long time ago. She has built worlds and albums surrounding her relationships, famously dropping Easter eggs that lead to who she's talking about. And she often gets extremely detailed in a way that not many stars do. I don't subscribe to the age-old joke that Taylor only writes about her exes, or that she should be hounded about it, even if at a certain point she did play into it.
For me, making an album is about telling stories, making confessions, and writing songs so detailed that each guy knows which song is about him.
But it'd be a plain lie to claim it isn't a huge source of inspiration for her, and that she hasn't largely benefited from exploiting her own relationships and her romantic partners, which to some degree everyone does when they're writing about heartbreak. But Taylor tends to take it a bit further than most, which can be engaging, invasive, or both. There's many stars who have extremely personal songwriting regarding relationships, but still retain a level of mystery, or at least refinement. Lana Del Rey and The Weeknd instantly come to mind. Taylor Swift is not one of those artists. Many times she's directly drawn trails that lead back to who she's talking about, even if that means subliminally spelling out their name in her album booklets, which has been a source of criticism due to her subjects often being subjected to harassment with little regard for Ms. Swift.
Wow, she ain't shit.
Is your personal preference. I'm not trying to be more police with something as very personal and nuanced as songwriting, especially since I've been a fan of a lot of her super personal and detailed records as well. But the fact of the matter is, she's opened up her relationships to the world. She's made it an integral part of her marketing.
No, Weeknd got real detailed with that song he made about Selena. He said he almost went under the knife for her.
I don't think you can have it both ways. It might not always be fair, but it's the most
give her a
conclusion. She set that precedent herself. She also seemingly talks about how her and her lover bonded over certain things like Charlie Puth. She says, "You smoked and ate 7 bars of chocolate. We declared Charlie Puth should be a bigger artist," which was very odd, especially considering some of the weird behavior Charlie Puth has shown, which seems to go against everything Taylor Swift has talked about throughout her career, and even in her personal experiences. But even more than that as well, Charlie Puth is just not a good artist. But he's pretty big too. I wonder what Taylor's definition of a big artist is.
I don't know anything about him.
On So Long London, which feels like a continuation and end to her previous song, London Boy, she allegedly makes reference to her relationship with Joe Alwyn, where she basically alludes to his sadness and how it was emotionally draining for her. And also directly talks about her want for a stronger commitment. "You swore that you loved me, but where were the clues? I died on the altar waiting for the proof." I think that lyric is stunning and one of the album's standouts. In another lyric from the song, she says, "You sacrificed us to the gods of your bluest days." It frames depression as if depression is a choice, which is interesting coming from Taylor Swift, who has been forthcoming about her own self-loathing in past songs like Anti-Hero. With that being said, I still feel like So Long London is one of the stronger moments on the album. The most ballsy song on the album is Do It With a Broken Heart, which sounds like a continuation of the Midnight's cut, Bejeweled. Because I'm a real tough kid.
Yeah, I talked a lot about that.
They said, "Baby, you gotta fake it till you make it," and I did. Lights, camera, bitch, smile, even when you wanna die. One of the songs that really stuck out to me though is Who's Afraid of Little Old Me. Crashed the party like a record scratch as I scream, "Who's afraid of little old me?" She also further details her relationship with fame and her mental health in the song. I don't think I've heard a Taylor Swift album where she feels so consistently angry like she does on this album. And in some instances it makes sense, like you've been with someone for close to a decade and they won't commit to marriage. And that's something you express that you want.
6 years is not close to a decade.
It's a less than favorable scenario.
It's closer to half a decade, but alright.
To the Maddie Healy situation. She constantly goes on and on about their chemistry, the frustration, and the fact that she's no longer with him. The lyrics, as far as the words and phrases, are also not the usual Taylor-styled lyrics. They feel extremely direct, but also very casual. A writing style that can be compared to artists like Phoebe Bridgers. And I do think there are more than a handful of lyrical comforts and misses on this album where you can tell what angle she was going for, but she doesn't land it. For example, "Fall asleep like a tattooed golden retriever. What if he's written mine on my upper thigh, only in my mind? One slip and falling back into the hedge maze. My friends all smell like weed or little babies." The second part of the album also has some weird, bad, and unsettling lyrics. I do find it odd that Taylor Swift allegedly wrote a diss track to Kim K titled "Thank You, Amy," which capitalizes the letters K-I-M in the title. In the year of 2024, why are we still in the Kim K beef? But more importantly, mentions her kids as some vindictive revenge bait. Like, you've already won the Kim K war. What else is new? There has to be better things to talk about. Ooh. Secondly, why in the hell did she write a line romanticizing the 1800s? We would pick a decade we wish we could live in instead of this. I'd say the 1830s, but without all the racist. Apparently the song further expands on its context and how nostalgia can be a weird thing.
I remember that.
She follows it up by saying, "Seems like it was never even fun back then. Nostalgia is a mind trick. If I'd been there, I'd hate it." But it just doesn't stick the landing. Of course it was a bad period filled with so much oppression and crisis. Why would you have nostalgia for it in the first place? It's common knowledge that so many negative historical events happen.
Yeah, that's a weird thing to say. It reminds me of, the old racists who would be like, "Oh, back in the good old days, we had all the power. These Negroes, they didn't have no say so." That's what it's giving, girl. Because that was a weird thing to say. I don't remember that bar.
It's the kind of nonsensical, disconnected.
That bar, like this is rap.
From an extremely wealthy white person.
I don't remember that
It
line.
doesn't consider the context of racial optics or oppression. In the sleep notes for the album, Swift acknowledges both the turmoil of the relationship and the sharpness of her pen. "It was a mutual manic phase. It was self-harm. It was house and then cardiac arrest," she writes. A smirk creeps onto the poet's face because it's the worst man that I write best. She does partially tie up the album with some romance by seemingly praising her love with Travis Kelce on The Alchemy, which is filled with tons of football references.
And that high school
both
song.
Post Malone and Florence and the Machine are featured on the album as well. And to me, it feels like bringing a distant friend to a therapy session. It just doesn't work. Neither of the features are bad, but not significant either. But let's address more of the real cruxes of this album. The production. It is sonically aligned with Midnight's, which is one of her more straightforward, plain, and generic sonic ventures. Midnight's has its moments of glory, and even produced some of my favorite Swift songs ever. But as a whole, it doesn't get my attention. Taylor's always been on the more safe side of production. You don't go into a Taylor Swift record expecting the eclecticism of Lana Del Rey, for example. No matter how much you can hear the Lana influence on her music, sonically she will make it safer, or even the sonic risk of someone like Lorde and the chances she took. And Billie Eilish, people who are known to be riskier production-wise.
I'm reacting to Billie, by the way, when she drops. She drops next month. I want to see what her music is like as well. But I'm a little familiar with her, though. I used to listen to The Bad Guy a lot. So I might like her album.
And whose influence can be heard on Midnight, albeit in a very sanitized and uncharacteristic manner. At some point, it was expected for a Taylor Swift album to have lively production, even if simple. But now she's completely leaned into sparse genericism, which also
she had another song too that I really like, Billie.
Midnight was met with big commercial success and received some critical praise, ultimately winning Album of the Year. Which is why I wouldn't be surprised if it gave Taylor the green light to follow in its footsteps. There's been a lot said about Jack Antonoff and his production, and Jack certainly has a signature style that mostly pulls from atmospheric 80s synth pop music, or on the other end of the spectrum, bare and dreamy piano ballads. And sometimes his production does indeed overlap, to where songs he's produced sound very similar. I think solely blaming Jack Antonoff is just too easy, and also removes the autonomy from Taylor, who was credited as a producer alongside Jack on all the songs on Midnight. Lana Del Rey's last record, Did You
Oh,
Know
she
There's
be
a Girl Under
producing her
Ocean
own music?
Boulevard, show that Jack is still able to put together creative and forward-thinking tracks with a lot of detail and character, no matter how thin he spread himself amongst other pop stars. But I think it's nice to have balance because he didn't produce all of the songs on Ocean Boulevard.
I did suggest that
and
she
even
might
some
be
that
doing
he did had other collaborators as well. But Jack is very capable of creating a good song, a great song even. It's not his album. Taylor Swift is very involved in her work. Tortured Poets feels like a companion piece to Midnight.
That might be the problem.
And there's just no charm in the production. It blends into wallpaper. If only the production was just half as bold as some of the lyrics are attempting to be. You would think the biggest star on earth would at least be keen to more sonic value. It's not like she can't afford the artistic risk. And it's a bit disappointing that this is the result, with all eyes on her and the world at her fingertips. Which obviously means there's a certain comfortability she has at this point in her career. There's always been moments of genius with Taylor, and then she backs off and retreats. I cannot predict that after widening her palette with more interesting chord progressions on folklore, that she'd retreat to safer territory, especially after the praise it received and new life it gave to her career. Sure, folklore wears its influences on its sleeve, but musically and composition-wise, it was well done. Also couldn't predict that after the genre-bending office of Red, or the sparkly production of 1989, that we'd be met with the inconsistency of Reputation, or the bewildering childishness of Me. It now seems like history is repeating itself.
I don't even realize when shit's sped up, because that's how I watch videos on my own.
Also, there's not a lot of hooks and great melodies, and a lot of the melodies feel recycled
I feel like he's talking slow.
throughout the record. Her writing is the wordiest and most crammed that it's ever been. I feel like if you're going to sacrifice more thrilling production to make your music as palpable as possible, then it needs to at least be catchy, not devoid of both catchiness and interesting production. It reminds me of Imogen Heap,
a word
behind the Taylor Swift deep cut.
I'll be saying that.
It happens to be one of my absolute favorite Swift songs. Imogen says this. So we tried a few things out, one of which had me going over to the keyboard to suggest a slightly odd
we can
chord
speed
progression.
this up, because I don't
As I do like a bit of that on my own
Word.
records. I played it to Taylor, and she quite clearly said, I think we're going to lose them at this point. And I said, wow, that's why you sell millions of records and I don't. She's Taylor Swift and she knows best. So we stuck to the chords. The story reveals that Taylor keeps commercial consumption in mind while creating music, which is fine. But her previous efforts have showed that she can pull off a balance. But currently, it feels like she's flowing at one pace. The album is not terrible, but it is middling. Some moments would certainly be improved by a better musical bed. Taylor also seems at odds with her superstardom a lot on the record, stardom that she very clearly fights to have, but crumbles under pressure when the non-worship opinions come out. The album feels like Midnight's B-sides and vault tracks, and a lot of the themes feel like topics that Swift has done in a much better manner earlier in her career. She has nothing to prove anymore. Her albums feel like she's trying to prove something, or perhaps trying to maintain her current unprecedented Titan status, while ultimately still coming up empty. This is the first Taylor Swift album that made me wonder if she was running out of ideas, or just trying to recapture the commercial glow and moment of her previous album, which in this case is Midnight's. It almost feels like Taylor Swift is becoming the Marvel of pop music. Everything is starting to feel disenchanted, conveyor belt oriented, and a remix of the same formula. I know we're living in a world where Taylor Swift feels exempt from criticism, but even more so her work feels exempt from criticism. Not only because the wrath of her cult-like following will likely be felt, but also because of her winning war for ownership over her music. She has built her status up to staggering heights, that it feels like everything she does at this point gets showered in accolades and acclaim, and surely some of it is deserved, but it's the audible gasp when you dare to say anything that's not favorable or straight up praise. Even if you are someone like me who has enjoyed a lot of her music throughout her career, you'll likely be deemed a hater. It's the biggest star in the world. You want it to be good, or even great. It has to be good. But it's honestly just okay at best. Taylor can coast off with name recognition. I think to some extent, Taylor is suffering a bit from Drake syndrome. No matter what they release, they know it will sell. The album is just too long for what it is, especially considering the double side of the album, which just feels like it falls in the vein of the vault songs.
mentioning Drake.
And vault songs certainly make sense within the context of the re-recordings,
Although I like some
but not every song needs to be heard. Some songs should stay in a vault. The album almost just feels like a straight-to-the-point diary entry, as opposed to the more diaristic and story-led songwriting. That soul aspect will likely appeal to a lot of people who have latched onto her personal life as a key point of interest. I've enjoyed many Taylor Swift albums and songs, but to me, Tortured Poets is not one of her great opus moments. It's just another uneven and plainly ordinary Taylor Swift album.
Sheesh. Tell us how you feel. He really went in, but this seemed like very fair criticism. Obviously, it doesn't seem like he's just hating, like he's just saying, I don't like it because I don't like Taylor, like he's being very detailed about why, he wasn't a huge fan of this project. And I feel like his criticism is valid, I already gave my opinion about it. If you want to hear what I think about it, then you can check out my Patreon. But yeah, He said what he said. Y'all let me know what y'all think, though. Let me know what other videos you want to watch, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Bye!